Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 124. Conflicting Views. Bihun, let me explain. Bihun came from a generation of smelters, his ancestors being well-known smiths in the Central Plains before the disaster of Yongjia. He explained to the two men, the ore mine in the Funiu Mountains is located at a crossroads for the earth vein. While copper ore is tougher than ordinary minerals, there's really no other proof as to whether the swords cast from that will have any unique properties. That is to say, Zhenglun added, whether the sword is cast from the bronze of the Shao mountain or not, we all think that it's not going to make much difference on the shape divine weapon's final strength. Chen Xing. Xian earnestly said, we've done many experiments in Jiankang ever since the martial god raised this issue. As of today, using the Ding heirloom inside His Majesty's palace, which is made of the bronze of the Shao mountain, there's also the ancient seal of Xuanyuanshi. Chen Xing couldn't believe what he heard. You melted the ancient Ding that had been handed down since time immemorial just like that? Xian replied, bold and confident, Shidi, that's not true. Is there anything in this land under heaven that is worth more than people? How many people will lose their lives if Shi gets reborn? Fengqianjun, the country may have no Ding, but our hearts will have one, right? His Majesty also agrees that our legacy doesn't depend on these. Chen Xing thought that while the disaster of Yongjia was still vivid in people's minds, that day that the Central Plains had fallen into enemies' hands, an event that eventually fermented into the biggest massacre to date ever since the Han had first founded the country, had also taught them one thing, be they books, instruments, calligraphies, paintings, or even the country's legacy and treasured heirlooms, no matter how precious they were, nothing carried weight in the face of flames of war. Spirits were inherited by the people and not passed on solely by the heirloom jade seal. We of course only sawed off one leg, Zhenglun added. We cast several daggers, but they were, in the end, not up to par with the ones made of iron ores. Chen Xing, how heavy is that leg? Xiangshu lost his patience. Stop talking about that leg. The conclusion. Xian finally said, in short, based on the ancient records as well as my observation of the use of the Akala blade by the martial god, the sword is purely used to cut. It doesn't affect the power much, and it's not necessarily impossible for us to exchange the ore and recast it. The most important things are the 6 lights attached to it and the 9-syllable incantation inscribed by Akala. The moment he heard this, Chen Xing knew that they had indeed understood the matter, and might have already become more familiar with the principles of divine weapons and magical artifacts than himself thanks to intensive studies throughout the year. Chen Xing thus nodded. Correct. The vessel is merely a tangible object used to sustain the Dao. All of the vessels are made to make it easier to bear magic and accommodate its power. And so, the problem becomes, Zhenglun said as he got up, how to find the 6 lights of the world and recreate the casting process. We've discussed several times that the greatest limitation lies in the forge itself. That is, special conditions are needed in order to infuse these 6 lights into the vessel. Zhenglun moved to a bookshelf as he spoke, with Xian standing up and following behind. The 2 exorcists cast a spell to open the hidden compartment behind it. Chen Xing stretched his head and peeked into the room, thinking that this scene was truly unbelievable. He had always felt mortals knowing magic was a difficult matter to accept, but now, these guys actually did it with such ease that they looked even more in control than himself. Xiangshu looked at Chen Xing, eyes bright. His meaning was clear with just a glance, see, everyone is thinking of a way for you. Chen Xing smiled. Zhenglun fetched a very small pendant. This is Jingguan Liulai, said Zhenglun as he held it in front of Chen Xing. It is said that this magical artifact was left by Swiren Shi, though we have doubts about its origin. Chen Xing. Go demonstrate it, reminded Xian. Zhenglun rubbed it with his finger. A flash inside the room, and the next moment, the study turned dark. The natural light was completely stored away, and the pendant lit up. It stores light, Xiangshu murmured. Zhenglun nodded and handed it over to Xiangshu, who looked at it for a moment before passing it to Chen Xing. So with this, we can regain the lights we need. Bihan added, indeed, but it doesn't really matter as long as you are able to collect all of the 6 lights in the forging ground. Among those, lightning flash, blaze of the flame, and luster of bone should be easy to get. While it's a bit difficult for sunlight, moonbeam, and starlight to appear at the same time, it's also not entirely impossible. Before this, our biggest problem had always been the fact that we didn't know how to remake the blade. But according to the scene in your dream, we only have to find the forge, and everything will be good after that. In this way, it had become possible to recast the Akala blade. Seeing Xiangshu look down at the marks on his arm, Chen Xing knew what he was thinking and asked, "Are you worried about how we're going to extract the marks?" Xiangshu nodded. Chen Xing continued, "I guess they might be drawn out on their own during the casting process." Xiangshu added, "Worst comes to worst, I'll just chop my hand off and throw it in." Everyone's expression immediately changed, and they hurriedly said, "You absolutely can't," one after another, but hearing it, Chen Xing knew that he was only joking. Now that they had a countermeasure, the rest of the matter should become a lot simpler. In that case, Xian confirmed, "I'll dispatch someone to Zoage to look for the whereabouts of the Hall of 10,000 Yaos. Once it's been found, we'll select a time and go there together." Xiangshu nodded. It was clear he had become much more relaxed after getting rid of the core of a big problem. He shifted his gaze to Feng Qianjun, who stretched his fingers and said, "Now that we've solved the most important problem, it's my turn? There are so many things to do these days. If it were up to me, since we've waited for no less than a year anyway, there's no need to rush things. Let's get some drinks, chat, and reminisce about the past, then slowly talk about them later. How's that?" Everyone nodded in agreement. Ever since Chen Xing and Xiangshu returned to Jiankang, they had not had a moment of rest. They got up, and the rest dispersed one by one. Xian had already arranged a place for the two of them to lodge inside the re-established exorcism department. A servant led them to a secluded courtyard on the east mountain. After walking through some stone steps, they were greeted with a small elegant courtyard decorated with bamboo. Wind-resistant lampstands made of stones were placed in and out of the courtyard, and there was also a pond filled with fish on the inside and 3 words "Bamboo Breeze Residence" written on the door. Inside the room, many priceless calligraphies and paintings were hung. In any case, with Xian's current status all around Jianghu, as long as he visited someone and asked for precious calligraphy, every single person who could write characters in the Great Jin truly had no reason not to give it to him. There were also a few special decorations from the land beyond the Great Wall added to the room that blended in surprisingly well. These animal hides, embroidery by the Hu people, and other things presumably bought from merchants, were all in perfect harmony with the elegant, green bamboo courtyard. I suddenly had an idea. Chen Xing stood at the edge of the pond watching the fish while Xiangshu undressed inside the room, changing into the Han clothing. "Guowang doesn't want to hear your rotten idea." Xiangshu came out after he finished changing. He was now wearing a black, waist-length robe made of thin silk commonly worn by the Jin people, its overlapping part fastened by a belt. With it were snow-white flax trousers with ankle straps and a pair of thin-soled leather clogs on his feet. Chen Xing turned around, and they both met each other's eyes. Chen Xing also followed him inside. Xiangshu fetched Jin clothing for him to change. "It's not an idea of me throwing away my life," explained Chen Xing. "It's just, like what we saw in the dream realm, we still have to confront Chu in the end, don't we?" "I know what you want to say." Xiangshu's tone turned harsh and stubborn. "You think I don't know? The moment I stop keeping an eye on you, the situation in the dream will undoubtedly repeat itself." "It's not like that," Chen Xing patiently answered. "There might be another way for us to extract the heart lamp and infuse it with the sword." Earlier when Zheng Lun took out Jingguang Li Yulai, I was thinking, would it work on me by any chance? Xiang Shu replied, don't even think about it. It'll only become even more dangerous if we try to separate the heart lamp from inside your Hun and Po. How come? Can't you just properly listen to what I have to say? I did, for every single day of those 3 years in the past, I did listen. But what did I get at the end? Xiang Shu was very sensitive toward this matter, practically one mention of it and he would explode. But again, this was also Chen Xing reaping what he had sowed. 3 years ago, because Iupiter had been intertwined with his fate, he had carried the idea that he was bound to die. It was this idea that had caused them to eventually go down the path that had almost made them lose each other. Since Chen Xing had never told Xiang Shu anything back then, it had left a scar so deep that it could even be described as an obsession in Xiang Shu's mind, which led to the current situation. No matter what Chen Xing said at this time, Xiang Shu would only believe that the past would surely repeat itself. There really might be a possibility for the heart lamp to be extracted. Chen Xing remembered the principle of the Luahun bell and continued, still with patience, this way, we won't need to. Like me, who used to be the Dinghai pearl. Xiang Shu suppressed his growing anger. If a magical artifact is set free, its corporeal body will be thoroughly destroyed. That's out of the question. Chen Xing was simply unable to communicate with Xiang Shu regarding this issue. In fact, ever since he remembered everything, they had been deliberately evading this topic from the very beginning. How are they to kill Chu in the future? Although nobody said anything, they were all very clear in their hearts, to settle everything, their current best option in order to succeed was for Chen Xing to give up his own life and infuse the heart lamp into the Akala blade. You've actually known it in your heart, stated Chen Xing. That's why you keep saying you won't let me leave your side. Xiang Shu didn't reply. That indeed came from the fear inside his heart, and it was precisely because of that fear he subconsciously resorted to words over and over again. Chen Xing said, if, at the end of the day, there's no other way after all, what then? Xiang Shu's complexion was terrifyingly cold as he answered, then we leave and let the divine land crumble. Chen Xing let out a melancholic smile. You just casually ran your mouth. I know you won't do it. But Xiang Shu said, I will. If the divine land were really destroyed, I think you have the clearest idea of who would get credited for it. Chen Xing changed his clothes. His mood had originally been very good and he was much more relaxed now. Only, the clothes he wore now made him think it was equivalent to wearing nothing. The upper part, in particular, was so thin that it was practically transparent. The outlines of his waist and abdomen were clearly visible when facing the light. The two men fell into a deadlock. Chen Xing knew Xiang Shu was still angry because of many things that he had done in the past. It was just, during this period of time, his love toward him as well as the happy days they shared together had diluted the conflicting views that had appeared between them, even more so because Xiang Shu was afraid of losing him and thus never actively mentioned it. Chen Xing had wanted to say yes, it's all my fault, before he gave it another thought. But Xiang Shu is actually ready to give his life in exchange for me to live well. Why should we quarrel over this again? Chen Xing moved and sat beside Xiang Shu. He stretched out a hand and slipped it into his thin clothing, wanting to tickle and then kiss him, but Xiang Shu, who was sitting alone sulking, blocked him almost imperceptibly. He was seemingly afraid he would compromise and give in to Chen Xing's insistence once he had fawned on him. Xiang Shu's move to block him suddenly made Chen Xing feel sad. Martial God! Xian rushed over again in a hurry. Seeing Xiang Shu sitting in the center of the room with a twitchy expression and Chen Xing looking at him anxiously on one side, he immediately understood what was going on. You're bickering again. Xian was used to it. I'll come back later then. Go on, ba. Chen Xing got up and left while Xiang Shu stayed as Xian told him a few words in a low voice. There were a lot of people Chen Xing would like to meet and a lot of things he would like to do after returning to Jiankang. He directly went out on his own, but after a long while, he discovered that Xiangshu had also followed him and was trailing behind him without saying a single word. Xian behind Xiangshu was walking while talking at the same time. They were apparently discussing something secretly. I got it. Xiangshu lost his patience and looked at Xian. You're still here. Xian signaled that he would go before withdrawing for real. Chen Xing remembered when they had first arrived in this place, Xiangshu must have received unspoken criticism every day then. This time, however, it was clear that he no longer emphasized his identity as a tile person and instead regarded himself as one of the Han. The exorcists also didn't express any objection to his identity and naturally accepted him after knowing he was Chen Xing's protector martial god. Chen Xing had also changed into those thin leather clogs that made it seem as if he was barefoot, and together with Xiangshu, they left the Bamboo Breeze residence. There was still a little time before the night appointment with Fei Tian Ye, so he wanted to meet other people first. Chen Xing and Xiangshu entered the exorcism department and saw young exorcists chatting in groups of 2s or 3s when they passed through the corridor. Seeing the two people coming over, the exorcists hurriedly saluted them. Chen Xing returned the greeting. After asking them about the location layout, they went around to the back of the department. In the yard, they saw Sima Wei fiddling with a pile of dried fish being hung to dry under the sun. You don't eat though? Asked Chen Xing. I bought them at the market, Sima Wei answered. I want to test whether they can turn into drought fiends. Chen Xing. Fetching a clamp, Sima Wei turned one salted fish over and said to Chen Xing, see, this one's eyeballs seem to be moving a little bit. Chen Xing, that's nothing more than an ordinary salted fish. Sima Wei, I've also tried smoking and drying it, both to no avail. Chen Xing, at least you know not to use people to test it out. Let me take a look. What about the other fish? Sima Wei, I gave them to the exorcists to be eaten. Where are those brothers of yours, the ones captured by Fei Tian Ye? Xiangshu asked. Sima Wei put the clamp down and signaled them to follow him. The scene that Chen Xing saw when they arrived at the back of the courtyard startled him to a jolt. 5 drought fiend heads with glaring eyes and mouths that kept opening and closing were each placed in a straight line inside a small wooden box, all of them facing left. At this moment, they all tried their best to roll their eyes to see Chen Xing. These were all the drought fiend kings Chen Xing had seen before. On these drought fiend king heads, there were also crimson and yellow hibiscus blossoms. The scene looked strange through and completely flipped what should have been a terrifying sight into a comical one. A chill crept down Chen Xing's spine when he saw this. He asked, how come, there are only the heads? Sima Wei answered, after beating 2 of the drought fiend kings, Fei Tian Ye first ran off with their heads. The rest were hot on his tail, but in Yulin, they also fell to Fei Tian Ye's ambush. Fei Tian Ye didn't know what to do with them, so he chopped their heads off and brought them all back. And the bodies? Xiangshu also felt little goosebumps looking at the scene. It's unclear, but they should be following the Silk Road and giving chase to Jiangnan. Fei Tian Ye had gone alone to chase Wangzi to Dukan in the west more than a year ago, where he had finally discovered his whereabouts after crossing Liangzu's border. Wangzi at that time had been leading the drought fiend kings to the ancient mass graveyard of the Qin period in Dukan. Perhaps because they had been no match for him, Wangzi led the drought fiend troops away and planned to add some numbers to the army. According to Sima Wei's description, the affair had occurred during a moonless, windy night. Although Fei Tian Ye was incapable of purifying the kings, his power was truly incomparable to what he had wielded before the revival of all magic. What's more, he could use not only resentment, but also the spiritual qi of heaven and earth now. And so, on the dark night when Wangzi had planned to resurrect his new targets, Fei Tian Ye activated the Senluo saber and absorbed all resentment that Wangzi had meticulously, assiduously, painstakingly gathered. Seeing that, Wang Zi became utterly confused at first and dispatched the drought fiend kings to scout around. Fei Tian Ye immediately made a change in plans and released Senluo Wang Xiang's magic. Vines sprouted out and trapped 2 drought fiend kings on the spot. Fei Tian Ye had learned from his past experience. He didn't single-mindedly fight all the way but chopped their heads off immediately before escaping. After looking left and right without seeing the kings returning, Wang Zi dispatched the other 3 kings to give chase, a move that resulted in Fei Tian Ye making a detour to the graveyard and going straight to Wang Zi. This second sneak attack was almost successful. Although it was impossible to separate the Hun and Po from Shi Hai's body, it was also good to give this man who went his own way a little trouble. It was just, at the last moment, Wang Zi made an effort to revive the drought fiend that went by the name Ghost King. This king's strength far surpassed Sima Wei and the rest, and Fei Tian Ye really was no match for him, so he had no choice but to flee. Fortunately, a mishap occurred because Wang Zi's ritual to resurrect the Ghost King had been interrupted several times under his interference. The Ghost King began to attack friends and foes alike, and even Wang Zi got hit in the head. Chen Xing. Xiang Shu. Fei Tian Ye dared not continue fighting and decided that retreat was the best option. Those 3. Sima Wei pointed at the 3 heads. Those 3 pursued him relentlessly, so when he arrived at Yulin, he set a trap and also brought their heads back in the end. Xiang Shu, can you purify them? The 2 of them were still carrying the stalemate atmosphere from before, and Chen Xing just pretended not to hear him until Xiang Shu repeated his words one more time. He then looked at the 5 heads, truly not knowing where to begin as he told Sima Wei, there are no bodies, so I can't use the heart lamp to purify the devil god's blood. Normally, if the bodies of these drought fiend kings were still intact, he might be able to give it a shot, but as it happened, Fei Tian Ye had cut their heads off to save on trouble and had even taken them 1,000 li away to Jiangnan, while the remaining bodies were most likely still wandering around in Liangzhou at this time. Sima Wei, send them away otherwise they really had nothing to live for. Chen Xing held one head up with both hands and examined it left and right. He saw that its facial expression was fierce, its mouth gaping as if about to bite. Xiang Shu reached out his hand, wanting to take the head off him, while motioning for Chen Xing to be careful not to get bitten. Chen Xing however unhappily evaded this gesture. He then told Sima Wei, even if the bodies were here, they had been far too corrupted by the devil god's blood. They aren't like you, I'm afraid they won't be able to regain their consciousness. After Chen Xing had snatched Sima Wei away, Wang Zi must have increased the dosage of the devil god's blood as to prevent the same thing from ever happening again, or might have also refined these drought fiend kings once more. This resulted in these 5 heads having an increased amount of resentment, so if he were to expel the blood's influence, he would inadvertently have to use the heart lamp to practically burn their corporeal bodies at the same time. Sima Wei said, Xian's desire is to leave them inside the department for the exorcists to study. These heads had obviously been looked left and right and even studied by those young exorcists for a long time. They might have clicked their tongues in astonishment each time they stood and watched them in a circle. Chen Xing pondered over the matter for a good while. Xiang Shu's anger seemed to have subsided long ago. He signaled Chen Xing to look, wanting to keep him entertained. Xiang Shu turned one of the heads around and let the 2 heads bite each other. Chen Xing restrained a smile and pretended to be angry. Don't tease them. Xiang Shu only wanted to amuse Chen Xing. He had originally planned to place the 2 drought fiend heads closer to one another and let them kiss to make Chen Xing laugh, but Chen Xing instead said, they were previously the ancestors to the Jin people. Can you show them a bit of respect? Xiang Shu felt a little awkward and could only stop talking again. Let them go said Sima Wei. Thereupon, Chen Xing activated the heart lamp and pressed a head on its forehead. Rays of light shone in all directions, and the drought fiend kings of the Sima family were one by one purified. After the heads were completely quieted down, Sima Wei closed their eyes one by one, letting them close their eyes contentedly in death. Sima Wei then turned his head and looked at Chen Xing. His muddy, unclear eyeballs moved a little, and although he was expressionless, Chen Xing sensed that he was saying thank you. Xiang Shu said, "You mustn't think you're alone because you're a drought fiend, you aren't any different than humans." Sima Wei nodded. Chen Xing knew that Xiang Shu could understand Sima Wei in a sense. He had, after all, experienced such confusion at that time. The three people left the exorcism department's backyard and slowly walked down the mountain road. Chen Xing deliberately walked in front, while Xiang Shu hugged his arms as he discussed something in a low voice with Sima Wei at the back. Tuobayan. Chen Xing caught sight of Tuobayan in the military ground located in front of the department. He was currently sorting out weapons. "Come to Feng Qianjun's house for a drink in the evening." Tuobayan straightened up and whistled at Chen Xing before trotting over. Chen Xing had been a little afraid that Xiang Shu would eat vinegar again. When he turned around to look at him, he discovered that although Xiang Shu was still talking to Sima Wei, his eyes were on him all along. Chen Xing's face flushed, and he turned his head again pretending as if nothing had happened. It was clear that Xiang Shu had seen through Chen Xing. "You wanted me to eat vinegar, but I'm not doing it. What did you expect just now?" Anyway, it seemed that after the two people had confirmed their feelings for one another, Xiang Shu wasn't as concerned about Tuobayan. "You're the chief instructor now." Chen Xing looked at Tuobayan and made small talk. Tuobayan was a bit embarrassed. He showed Chen Xing the ring in his hand and said, "Lu Ying taught me a mantra to slightly control the magical artifact. I'll show it to you another day." Chen Xing really didn't expect that Tuobayan would also become a member of the exorcism department and come to Jiangnan. He had heard of the statement that said fate would amend itself by constantly moving toward a certain, fixed trajectory. This had really made him slightly concerned that at some point in the future, Tuobayan would turn into a drought fiend as had happened in the past. However, since he had a spell taught by Lu Ying now and this ring that could protect his body, Chen Xing thought that Tuobayan would surely be able to live on well. The two talked a bit, and Chen Xing soon noticed that Tuobayan's expression was still carrying an almost indistinguishable hint of anxiety. It's also possible that Lu Ying may come back. As expected, Tuobayan couldn't help but sigh. He frowned and said, "It's not Lu Ying. Did you know? A lot of things happened in Chang'an during the year you were gone." Chen Xing didn't have time to inquire about the world's current state of affairs ever since he had gotten off the ship, but Tuobayan, after arriving in Jiankang, had his hands on a lot of information from the Jin people and now had a rough idea of everything that happened on Fujian's side. "His Majesty is quickly turning into a drought fiend," Tuobayan said. "People have been saying that he no longer listens to anyone's opinions in Chang'an and that he's currently gathering troops in preparation to cross the Fei River, to make war against the Great Jin." Chen Xing pondered silently. He was clear about the entire process of turning a living person into a drought fiend. It had happened to Feng Qianyi, Che Lufeng, as well as Tuobayan later. It could be as fast as several days or as slow as several years after drinking the devil god's blood. The body would continuously undergo changes. Tuobayan said, "At least he's still alive for now. Wang Zi is still waiting, but what is he waiting for?" Chen Xing felt it was a little strange. If Fujian had finally chosen to drink the devil god's blood and had acknowledged his allegiance to Chu, Wang Zi should have already settled the matter in one go. He could have completely transformed this monarch of the human world. By doing this, he would have had the whole Great Qin under his control. From what he had seen in the dream realm, Shu was in need of a vessel, and his first choices had been Xiang Shu and Chen Xing. But looking at the current situation, it was clearly unrealistic to kidnap Chen Xing to be his body double. Let alone catching someone, Wang Zi himself had almost lost his life back then. Since the most suitable bodies were not an option, it was natural for him to change his objective to Fujian. It was within reasons to say he could use the devil god's blood to refine Fujian's body before transferring his hun to the body and taking it over, just like what Gu Qing, who had read his thoughts when she had been possessed by him, had told them the first time around. But for what reason has Chu been so slow in replacing Fu Jian? Wang Zi doesn't dare to. Behind Chen Xing, Xiang Shu walked over with Sima Wei and opened his mouth. Once the changes in Fu Jian become clearly noticeable, if he fully transforms into a drought fiend, how long do you think the Qin court will hold together? Chen Xing thought about it. In case the emperor really turned into a drought fiend, all of the 5 Hus would certainly run away. It was possible even his own son would be very frightened and would think of rebelling against him. But Wang Zi is perfectly capable of turning disobedient subordinates into drought fiends, though. Chen Xing answered without thinking. Anyway, if anyone wanted to rebel, he could just kill them all and then resurrect them afterward. Isn't that just great? But Sima Wei said, he's unable to control them. Even if he turned all of Chang'an commoners into drought fiends, it would still be useless. If there's no drought fiend king to take the lead, ordinary living corpses just utterly lack cohesion. Chen Xing immediately remembered the reason why this drought fiend king Sima Wei's resurrection was so important. They were there as Chu's substitute to lead the legion of drought fiends, to command these otherwise group of living corpses that only knew how to bite all over the place. This was also precisely why Wang Zi needed to go and find a new king. End chapter. Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 125. Summoning Souls. Nighttime, on the Huai River. On both shores, the Jiankang residences were lit up by dazzling lights of various colors. The Feng family opened up a private cruise and hosted a feast welcoming Xiang Shu and Chen Xing, who had just returned to Jiangnan. The sound of a qin reverberated, accompanied by the cozy breeze of early summer. Chen Xing and Xian were sitting on one side of the screen as they looked at the map of the vast land south of the Yangtze River. I have no objection, said Chen Xing, if we are to rebuild the exorcism department. But from now on, exorcists have to think thoroughly about where they stand. There ought to be no distinction in accepting who people as well. Correct, Xian agreed. From the very beginning, this one problem is the reason I dared not completely open the department and chose to wait for you to come. After all, you know Shixing's status, there are many words that are inconvenient for me to say in front of His Majesty. When he heard this, Chen Xing finally understood the reason why Xian had been waiting for him to come back to lead the exorcists. It was because, with his current position, Xian also had to put Emperor Sima Yao's goal into consideration, regardless of what he was doing. But Chen Xing was different. He could certainly refuse for the newly revived exorcism department to serve the imperial household, which would have resulted in it being reduced to be one of the Great Jin's official departments. In other words, as long as Chen Xing didn't acknowledge it, there was nothing Sima Yao could do about it. Chen Xing also emphasized this point the most. Otherwise, judging from the world's current affair with the never-ending struggle between the Hu and the Han, had they allowed exorcists equipped with magic to enter the battlefield and cast spells and throw bombs all over the place, how could the heavens' law tolerate such a thing? Not to mention that coming out victorious in a battle didn't mean the end of it all. Those exorcists during that prosperous era of the Han dynasty 300 years ago had been very capable of doing anything. They had been omnipotent, but as their power grew, they grew more involved with the royal family. It had eventually led to the witchcraft turmoil that had harmed the great Han. This is the first clause, said Xian. But since you've already made an agreement with the Yao King, the aggression between humans and Yaos can also lessen a little. Chen Xing nodded and hummed in agreement. Though I think there's also a limit of what Chongming has jurisdiction over, so the matter of restraining Yaos will have to be done eventually. But, as long as nobody violates the rules, be they Yaos or humans, everyone ought to live in this divine land in harmony and must not exterminate one another. Xian pondered for a bit before replying, all right, Shixing will revise the laws of exorcists according to what we've discussed and send it over to you for review another day. Chen Xing knew that he couldn't shrink responsibility and refuse the position. As the first appointed great exorcist after the revival of all magic, it also should have been his task to rebuild the world order. However, according to his own temperament, he would only take care of the exorcism department for a period of time and would then pass the position to a suitable person after it was completed. The feast began after they had finished discussing the details, and everyone came over one by one drinking wine. Chen Xing, as before, sat next to Xiang Shu. People were toasting each other as they talked about anything other than the upcoming matter and stuff related to Wangzi. You both. Feng Qianjun looked at Chen Xing and then at Xiang Shu. He had discovered that the way the two were interacting today was slightly different than they had been in the past. Xiang Shu unexpectedly restrained himself a little in front of Chen Xing, his gaze always following his movement. You're not mistaken, Xiang Shu, who seemingly knew what Feng Qianjun wanted to ask, answered him and put an arm around Chen Xing's shoulder. Go on, we finally can drink to our heart's content. Feng Qianjun said, all right, I propose a toast for you too. Gu Qing poured them wine. Xiang Shu was naturally aware of the meaning behind Feng Qianjun's toast. He raised his cup and toasted him in response. Everyone was talking to each other about trivial matters during the banquet, but there were still a lot of matters weighing on Chen Xing's mind, which made him somewhat distracted. Xian told Chen Xing, little Shidi, I think I may also need to find a protector. If you're aware of what a protector does, then sure, go for it. Chen Xing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xian asked, a protector, is there to protect the exorcist, isn't it? I asked Qianjun to be my protector, but he was unwilling to do so. As for Tuabashaoxia, although his martial arts is slightly inferior. No. Feng Qianjun's expression changed immediately. He did not in the least want to be in that kind of relationship with Xian. Xian. Tuaba Yan however smiled and said, I don't mind. What does a protector need to do? Air. Chen Xing said, it's like me and Xiang Shu, and also Zheng Lun and Bi Hun. Can you do it? Also, in any event, Xie Shixing does have a small family of his own. Tuaba Yan's smile froze. Xian, it can also not be like you two. You'd better think about this through and through, Shixing, Chen Xing gave him a piece of advice in a low voice. Putting other reasons aside, your body won't be able to endure it. Xian's expression also grew awkward. Chen Xing continued, why don't you take a look at those volumes that our sect sent over before you make a decision? Is that truly the case? Back then, Xian had simply glanced over the ancient volumes, and upon seeing that most of them were stories, he had no more interest in reading them. His time was all spent studying spells, but now that Chen Xing had said so, he immediately changed his tune. Even if I have no protector, that's fine, I'll depend on myself instead. Drink, drink. Feng Qianjun had been waiting for Xian to get rid of that idea, and he immediately began to offer others drinks. After everyone finished laughing awkwardly, no one brought up this matter again. Everyone was silent. Xian sighed. After this, a large battle may be coming our way, but since everything has started anew and we have a chance to start again from the beginning, I'm thinking. Saying this, he gestured at Chen Xing. Chen Xing nodded and added, we will definitely win. Everyone raised their cups, and though Xiao Shan was absent this time, they considered this to be the first proper reunion, after they met up again, of the small group of exorcists that had already existed during the silence of all magic. That toast also contained the hopes that they held towards the future. Chen Xing glanced at Xiang Shu, who thought deeply before nodding. We will definitely win against him in battle. Have you found the whereabouts of the Luahun bell? Chen Xing asked Xian. Xian shook his head and said, Wen Che will appear sooner or later, and there's no way that Wangzi will not take action. As the liquor settled in their stomachs, Chen Xing glanced at Xiang Shu, only to see that he was downing cup after cup. There were already hints of tipsiness showing on his face, but he had spoken little tonight, instead choosing to never stop drinking. Stop drinking, Chen Xing said. You've drunk so much wine today. Xiang Shu rose of his own accord and replied, I'm going to get some air at the front of the boat. Xiang Shu left, heading to the prow of the boat to sober up. Chen Xing sat for a moment more, before rising and coming to the front of the barge as well. Xiang Shu stood in front of the railings, the lights on both banks of the river reflected in his eyes. Protector, do you really not want to hear my cunning idea? Chen Xing asked. Xiang Shu's answer was not at all related to that, as he said solemnly, don't you think that this all feels like a dream? When Chen Xing had returned to Jiankang a second time, he suddenly had many words to say. He wanted to go stroll through the autumn close festival with Xiang Shu, and he wanted them to go to Kuiji together and once again take a look at the place that Xiang Shu's mother had lived before. Xiang Shu continued to himself, sometimes, I feel like all of this is truly a dream. After the Dinghai pearl broke, it showed me a long dream, and because I was unable to get what I wanted, the heavens fulfilled my wishes in this dream. Xing I know what you want to say. Chen Xing had a helpless expression on as he said, you know? All right then, tell me. Xiang Shu murmured, you want me to keep you company, because these 3 years that we've been together are a gift that the heavens have bestowed upon us. Life is ephemeral, and we are born in the morning but die at night. For us to have spent these 3 years living happily was already not easy. In the end, you'll pick up the sword again, and walk towards the sword forging altar in Zoage. You really felt that I would definitely think that way. Chen Xing really had no way to deal with him. Xiang Shu turned, intently studying Chen Xing's eyes. Chen Xing replied, at a loss for what else to say, but, all right, those truly do sound like words that I'd say. I only wish. Xiang Shu. Ever since the day that he and Xiang Shu had reunited, even after they entered the dreamscape of the huge Kun, Chen Xing had never known that in the last battle against Shu, in order to win, he would have to offer up his own life as the price. But for some reason, after doing everything over again, he no longer had the thought that he had no choice but to die, like he had thought before. Perhaps it was because he had already died once, which caused him to cherish his own life even more. Perhaps it was because he and Xiang Shu had finally confirmed each other's affections, but he wished for nothing more than to keep living on properly. But here was Xiang Shu, who had grown scared thanks to his meddling, because he kept thinking that Chen Xing would take that sword and heroically head towards death. Chen Xing suddenly sensed that something was amiss. Wait, what's in the river? Xiang Shu sensed it as well, and his left hand immediately grabbed Chen Xing's wrist. The two of them took a half step back from the prow. Tonight, he had drunk quite a lot of wine, and he was still a little drunk, which caused him to lack awareness of his surroundings. A huge black shadow passed under the bottom of the boat. No way, Chen Xing murmured. The exorcists are all on the boat, would Wen Che come to engage in battle right now? Xiang Shu's voice darkened. Xian. Feng Jun. Stop drinking. Come outside quickly. Xian put down his wine cup, but in the same moment that he rose, the waters of the Huai River suddenly exploded. An azure jiao rushed out of the water, immediately overturning the barge. You two have finally come, Wen Che's voice stated coldly. In that moonlit night, the azure jiao let out a long cry. It spewed out a dense black fog, before flying instantly into the air. You're seeking death. Without a moment's hesitation, Xiang Shu turned to push Chen Xing behind him. Xian and Feng Jun stepped up onto the prow of the boat, rushing out with rapid steps. Chen Xing raised his voice. Wen Che. You were once an exorcist as well, realize the error of your ways and turn back ba. Wen Che chuckled coldly. He stood on top of the azure jiao's head and replied darkly, either way, there's no escaping this battle. Great exorcist, with the revival of all magic as of today, let's see if you'll be able to escape the jaws of death. Chen Xing ignited the heart lamp, and light burst forth from Xiangshu's body. His martial robe fluttered forth as he flew into the air, a golden shield appearing in his hands. He swung that in an attack towards the azure Jiao. With a dang, the Jiao's head went spinning away, and they separated a little. Afterwards, Xian tossed out the whirlwind talisman, sending Feng Qianjun high up into the air. Tuoba Yan rushed out with rapid steps, and the Liu Yun signet ring on his hand flashed. A long arrow appeared, and he drew his longbow, knocked the arrow to it, and sent it whistling out. Wen Che immediately turned the Jiao dragon to avoid that arrow, but the arrow actually circled around in the air, chasing after them doggedly. A brief pause's time was all that was needed for Xiangshu to arrive in front of Wen Che, and Chen Xing let out an angry shout. Break! In the next moment, the small Luohun bell appeared in Wen Che's hands, and he waved it gently. With a dang, a ghost appeared from Xiangshu's body in an instant, taking human form. His soul had actually been forcefully ripped out from the inside. Chen Xing! Xiangshu let out a loud roar, only for another beam of golden light to shoot out from his body. The power of the dragon Zuyin took form, starting to battle with the Luohun bell for Xiangshu's Hunpo. Immediately, Wen Che turned and steered that dragon into the sky, still holding the Luohun bell in his hand, which pulled at Xiangshu's 307 po. The dragon kept spiraling upwards, increasing its elevation. Xiangshu! Chen Xing shouted. The Luohun bell in Wen Che's hand swung again, and the sound of the bell resounded through the night, across the entire city. The light from Xiangshu's body faded, but all of the people in the city of Jiankang woke. The barge that Chen Xing was standing on had already overturned and was sinking as he stood, and the people on the boat began to flee for their lives. Feng Qianjun flew to the front, hacking down with his blade. Wen Che immediately pulled the artifact back, giving up on Xiangshu, before turning to Feng Qianjun, ringing the bell again. With a dang, Feng Qianjun and Xiangshu both plummeted down as if they had been struck by lightning. Xian immediately sensed the danger, and he shouted, "We'll fight another day." But Wen Che was clearly unwilling to let them go so easily. He pressed the head of the Jiao down, and they charged towards Xian. Xian immediately let out a loud shout. He sent out all his spells at once, even while he hid behind Chen Xing. Resentment roiled in Wen Che's hand as he flew towards Chen Xing and Xian. The light of the heart lamp exploded forth from Chen Xing's hand, turning into a wave of light as it pushed at Wen Che and that Jiao dragon. Xian called upon the waters of the river, which swept up the entire barge. The waters rose like the hand of a giant, holding the entire barge, sending it flying towards Wen Che and that azure Jiao. Chen Xing exorcised the resentment surrounding Wen Che, but Wen Che refused to retreat. With two more dangs, he sucked away Tuoba Yan and Xian's souls as well. "I won't keep you." Wen Che laughed shrilly. "Wait for your death to come, ba. Exorcist." The waters of the river suddenly thundered down, sweeping Chen Xing into the river. "Brother Feng." Gu Qing leapt into the Huai River and pulled Feng Qianjun to her, dragging him onto the bank. Chen Xing knelt on the upper banks of the river, swiftly inspecting Xiangshu, who had been swept onto the shore by the waters. "Xiangshu! Xiangshu!" Chen Xing worriedly patted Xiangshu's face. The next morning, the sun had risen to the height of 3 bamboo poles. Within the exorcism department, Xian, Tuoba Yan, Feng Qianjun, and Xiangshu laid in a row. Chen Xing was still dripping water, and his hair was a mess. His thin clothes were all plastered to his body. Sima Yao stood to one side, his expression one of shock, and he opened his mouth slightly as he lowered his head to look at the scene in front of him. Sima Wei had his arms crossed as he ducked his head to study the group. Pu Yang murmured, "What can we do?" Sima Yao said, "Chen Xianzhen, look, you all were perfectly fine, sitting on the barge and drinking wine, only for the proprietress of the Dongj Bank to appear riding a dragon. Let me make a correction, It was a Jiao, Chen Xing said tiredly. Yes, then he used the Luohun bell to take away the souls of Xian, Tuobayan, Feng Qianjun, and my protector. Pu Yang asked curiously, why were you not at risk? Chen Xing frowned deeply as he replied, the heart lamp. Last time, Chen Xing knew clearly that he and Xiangshu had both heard the sound of the Luohun bell, but at that time, Xiangshu was the Dinghai pearl, and he himself had the protection of the heart lamp. That was why neither of their souls had been sucked away by Wangzi, and it was exactly because of that that Wangzi began to suspect Xiangshu's identity. But this time, Xiangshu's body had already been rebuilt, and he was no longer the Dinghai pearl given human form. Even if he had the power of the dragon protecting him, Wen Che had still taken away a part of his Hunpo, so whether or not he could wake was completely unknown. The Luohun bell's power was truly too strong, as his own side Xian, Feng Qianjun, and Tuobayan had all been knocked out. What was he supposed to do now? Chen Xing said, I need to go find Wen Che and take the Luohun bell back for once and for all. Pu Yang Xianchen, please, in these coming few days, look after the exorcism department, and take good care of them. Pu Yang asked, you know where Wen Che is hiding? Chen Xing pondered for a moment. Last time, Wen Che had been hiding in the sea of Lihun flowers under the earth, but this time, he might not have returned to his original location. I don't know, Chen Xing said. I'll have to depend on my luck. Sima Wei glanced at Chen Xing, before saying, I'll go with you. Pu Yang added, if you'll allow me to speak freely, Chen Xianchen, the situation now is very precarious. Shi Hai may already be on his way here. Do you have a handle on the situation? The sooner, the better. Pu Yang's reminder was unnecessary, because Chen Xing could also sense the severity of the situation. Their own side was completely lacking in firepower, and perhaps the next step in Wangzi's plan was to come and stir up their headquarters. It was also very likely that Wangzi was already waiting somewhere near Jiankang, for just this moment to come. And before, when Wen Che had escaped Xian's ambush, that was simply him pretending to be weak. His true motive was to wait until Xiangshu and Chen Xing returned to Jiangnan before attacking, so that Wen Che could catch them all in one fell swoop. The rest of them dispersed, and Chen Xing frowned heavily. He knelt by Xiangshu's side, anxiety and irritation eating away at him. Sorry, Chen Xing said, I wasn't trying to make you angry on purpose. Xiangshu. Xiangshu's hair and eyebrows were soaked with water, and his clothes were stuck to his body. Chen Xing listened first for his heartbeat, before he then stroked his face, his voice trembling as he said, I love you, Xiangshu. As long as you are all right, I'll listen to everything you say, whatever you say I'll. I heard, Xiangshu suddenly replied. He opened his eyes, looking at Chen Xing with a gaze filled with doubt. Chen Xing. Xiangshu sat up, looking at Xian and the rest around him. Chen Xing, you didn't faint. Xiangshu, I didn't. What did you say just now? Say it again. Chen Xing. You clearly could have woken up earlier. Chen Xing said wildly. Xiangshu mounted his horse, his clothes still half wet. Are you still not going? We're going to save them. Chen Xing replied, why didn't you tell me? Xiangshu reached a hand out to Chen Xing, pulling him onto the horse, letting Chen Xing sit in front of him. They left out of one of the side gates of Jiankang, galloping towards Kuiji. I wasn't sure if Wangzi had planted any of his men within the exorcism department, Xiangshu said. Being a little more careful is always good. Chen Xing, how did you come up with that? It was Xian's plan, Xiangshu said. Upon learning that the exorcism department was to be rebuilt, Wangzi would definitely come up with a way to obstruct that, or even destroy it. Wen Che has the Luohun bell in his hands, so we had to come up with a way to lure him out. We have to get to Kuiji quickly and steal back the Luohun bell, then turn it against Wang Zi, all in one go. Chen Xing thought, you all are really too smart. Xian had predicted right from the start that Wen Che would definitely come to take care of them, so their feint from before had simply been a red herring. And as soon as Wen Che used the Luohun bell and collected their souls, he would definitely let his guard down against his enemy. It was also a good chance for Xiang Shu to pretend that he had lost all ability to do battle, so they could draw Wang Zi over and have him start his all-out attack against Ji Unkong. End chapter.